Cool. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the Tribal Community Resilience webinar series. We'll be getting started soon. This session today is focusing on resilient infrastructure. So we have a lot of good guest speakers lined up to talk about that topic. So I'll go ahead and just get us through some introduction slides. So webinar logistics for this session, we're trying to discourage the use of AI note-taking bots. So those are going to be removed. Please remain muted with your camera off during the presentation, but you can unmute and turn your camera on when we have a Q&A session at the end. And just to inform everyone, the webinar will be recorded up until the Q&A session. And that'll be posted later on the Southwest CASC's website and the Indigenous Climate Resilience Networks page as well. You can, I think we are able to use the chat to submit questions to the speakers. I don't think we have Q&A function set up, but the chat, pretty much you can submit questions through there. And then, yeah, this last note, just as a disclaimer, all the views expressed by the speakers don't necessarily represent those of the hosts or other affiliated partners. So really quick, just to give you an introduction into this webinar series. It's being hosted and organized by the Tribal Community Resilience Liaisons across the country with support from the Southwest CASC. We work really closely with the USGS National and Regional Climate Adaptation Science Centers, or CASCs. And the CASCs are partnership-driven programs that team scientists with natural resources managers in communities to help fish, wildlife, water, land, and people adapt to a changing climate or a changing world, I suppose is what we now say. Yeah, and the regional centers are all hosted at a university alongside a consortium of other universities and organizations within their respective regions. So if you're interested which region you're at, like that's you can look at the map and search your different CASC. So in every CASC region except the Pacific Islands, the Bureau of Indian Affairs branch of Tribal Community Resilience contributes funding to the Tribal Community Resilience Liaisons through agreements with universities, tribal nations, and tribal organizations. So us as TCR liaisons, we work closely with BIA, USGS, and the CASCs and our host organizations to support tribal adaptation and resilience. And the TCR liaisons were available to provide any support at any stage of any environmental project related to adaptation and resilience, including brainstorming what kind of projects might make sense for your community or nation. For example, we can help with things like vulnerability assessments, adaptation plans, and things like that. And if your regional liaison doesn't have the expertise to support some part of your work, we'll be able to connect you to someone who does. So definitely feel free to reach out to your tribal community resilience liaisons. And you can find your liaison through the BIA or USGS links that hopefully we're able to put in the chat shortly. And you can reach out for support at any time. So this webinar series is ongoing, and we invite you to register for all of the sessions if you haven't already, and you can share it widely with your colleagues. So we hope that you'll also join us for next month's session about water, and we can put the registration link in the chat. So with that, I'm just going to get into a really brief introduction to our topic, and then I'll introduce our guest speakers. So our session today, focusing on resilient infrastructure. Resilient infrastructure is a really broad topic, and it can look like supporting resilient energy systems, water systems, transportation, communications, and also the built environment. So here are some examples of what tribes and pueblos and native villages are doing around the country to promote resilient infrastructure. So for Blue Lake Rancheria, they've developed really impressive microgrid project. In the Shinnecock Nation, hopefully I said it right, there's a living shorelines project where they're restoring coastal erosion. The Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, they have resilient housing projects. The Jamestown S'Klallam Tribe, they have solar on their nature center, solar panels, and also they've implemented things like electric vehicle chargers there too. And then another example, which gets to that point of like the communications aspect, is Paula Tribe has developed a really impressive emergency alert or emergency preparedness like communications network to reach tribal members. So these are all different examples of what resilient infrastructure can look like. So with that, I'll start introducing our guest speakers. So we'll have David DeJong from Gila River Indian Community. He is the Pima-Maricopa Irrigation Project Director. We'll also have Jolene Auliye, sorry, Jolene, if I didn't say that right, who is with Native American Fish and Wildlife Society and is the Alaska Tribal Community Resilience Liaison. And we'll also have Tsoniki Crazy Bull from New Mexico Indian Affairs, who is the Capital Outlay and Tribal Infrastructure Fund Manager. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and pass it on to David to start his presentation. David, are you able to unmute?
Am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are.
All right, my apologies. Again, David DeJong, Director of the Pima-Maricopa Irrigation Project. And I've got a lot of slides, so I'm going to go through them quickly in my 15 minutes. Just for reference, this is the location of the Gila River Indian Community. We are just south of Phoenix, home of the Akimalatam and the Peeposh. And a driving force in much of what we're doing is the Arizona Water Settlements Act, which of course was the historic water settlement for the community that statutorily recognized the community's water resources, which total 653,500 acre feet of water. To put that another way, that would be sufficient water for well north of 3 million people. And I won't go through the water sources. There's actually 9 discrete sources of water. I've lumped them into general categories here. It's a large water budget. Well, we use the Arizona Water Settlements Act to transform the existing irrigation system that you see here into this. It is a state-of-the-art modern irrigation system with concrete lined canals, pipelines, check structures, flow control structures, and it's all on SCADA, meaning it can be remotely operated. This is allowing fallowed land, and this is a familiar scene across the community where the old irrigation system constructed by BIA back in the 1920s was unsuccessful and did not bring land back into production. Well, we're bringing that land back into production, not only into production, but very productive farmland, as there is well over 250,000 irrigable acres within the community. How are we doing that? Well, we're modernizing this antiquated irrigation system, and this is what we inherited. And again, this is what it looks like today. It's a completely revised system that is making farmers and growers here in the community much more efficient in their use. I'm going to go through just a couple of slides to show you some of the photos of construction, and then I want to get into really the MAR, the recharge sites, and the solar. Here was just one of our construction projects where we had to put a triple barrel siphon under an existing canal. This is the lining of one of our canals that we happen to call the Pima Speed Canal. And by the way, the lining of the canals has been a major water conserver. Most of our canals on average lost between 40 and 45% of the water, meaning it never made it to the farmland. We now have an efficiency of delivering about 93 to 95% of the water. Here is the new South Side Canal. This was an existing canal that we completely rebuilt. This is the bifurcation, just to give you an idea of the size of this project. This canal that you see in front of you is a 2,000 CFS channel. This is at the bifurcation point where water goes to the southwest to serve Gila River Farms, or we can go to the northwest to serve the tribal lands in the eastern and central part of the community. Well, 3 years ago, actually 4 years ago, we began during the Biden administration negotiating for funding that would allow us to take water that was provided under the water settlement and bring it to areas where we can use that water. You see here this aqua colored line and this golden rod colored line. This is where we take water up here from the city of Mesa, over here from the city of Chandler. This is reclaimed water, A+ water, but it came in on the wrong side of the river. All of the demand was on the south side of the river. You see here, Gila River Farms. Well, the community engaged in some very strategic planning and agreements with the Department of Interior, whereby the Interior Department funded this roughly $83 million project that allowed us to move that water. This project is now complete. We had former Vice President Kamala Harris came out to visit this project when we had the groundbreaking. This has proven to be extremely resilient for tribal growers because we can now assure water where tribal growers need it. In the past, we couldn't always do that because of the unreliability of Gila River water and the Colorado River water. Another way that we are engaging in resiliency and innovation is finding ways to sustainably manage groundwater. We did modeling. We update our model every couple of years, and all this is showing you is if we took the hydrology of the Gila River over a 100-year period, this is what we would see, assuming we irrigated about 90,000 acres of land. Blue means we have sufficient water, surface water. The reddish color, meaning we would have to pump groundwater, and where you see spaces that are white, that means there's a deficiency of water. This was huge for us in order to plan the irrigation system. How to protect agriculture during water shortages, and we all know we're in this long-term drought. Well, one of the ways we did that was through Manny's Aquifer Recharge. This is our first recharge facility, but we wanted to do it in such a way that gave the community the option of either storing this water for the future or monetizing that water to exchange water credits with outside entities that may be looking to purchase water. All right, so how do we do this again? That's recharge. This is a bank account. We're ensuring a sustainable yield of groundwater use. That's a directive by the tribal council that we not pump more groundwater than what is recharged, both naturally and through artificial purposes. We started with off-reservation recharge. All of these irrigation districts you see, here's the community. We started off-reservation until we were ready on reservation. We identified multiple locations where we could recharge. Then we began with a permit with the Arizona Department of Water Resources, and we did that because if the community wants to monetize those water credits, they have to be in a permitted area. So we got a permit from ADWR. This is our permitted area. We have monitoring wells that surround it. This is what the recharge site looked like before we did anything. This was the first water that we sent into the recharge site, and it was as simple as we're discharging water up on a tertiary bench of the river. And as you see, most of that water tended to hug the south bank of the river up on the upper terrace. But what it did is it allowed us to learn a little bit more about how water was recharging, what kind of infiltration rate. 2017, we added this distribution box and this channel going north. And what you see here, this vegetation, this all came back naturally in the river. This was 2 years into the recharge site. We then adapted and we added, at the request of the community, an interpretive trail site. And this site is now fully completed. Gila River Interpretive Trail. This is what it looked like in 2019 when we finished construction. 2021. Again, we planted 3,000 native plants, including local cottonwood and willow trees, both of which are important for the artisans in the community. And again, this is 4 years into the recharge program at this particular site, and you can see the forest that's been created. Here I am with Governor Lewis. We won 4 awards that year for the best projects throughout the state of Arizona. That was our first recharge site. That wasn't our last. Here you see 2020, we added a second site, not quite as sexy. Here's our third site. Again, it's not as dramatic as the first site that you saw. This is where we discharge water from the canal into the recharge site. Here's our most recent one. We actually started delivering water here in August of 2025. And here is what we have recharged since 2015. We're about 240,000 or 230,000 acre feet of water that's been recharged in the community, excluding the 2 million acre feet that we recharged outside the community. A lot of people ask what the evapotranspiration and evaporation losses are in these facilities. Well, we've monitored it now for better than 6 years, and it's less than 2% losses. So these are extremely efficient recharge facility. Our impact on the groundwater, as you see here, is very positive. We're seeing a slight increase, which is good. But recharging water is not the only way of creating resiliency. The community has a vision of having the first green irrigation district in the world. And so 4.5 years ago, we began planning for solar over canal projects. This was our first site. This is what it looked like before we put anything in. This is what it looks like today. This is a short section of about 1,000 feet, and it's in the middle of a 24-mile long pipeline that's 108-inch diameters in size. This was funded under a tribal partnership program with the Army Corps of Engineers. We then engaged in phase 2. This was a partnership with the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. This project is fully completed as well. Solar over the Casablanca Canal. We had projected 1.3 megawatts of power. We're actually generating 1.8. We are under construction on our third project called the Santan Solar Project, and our fourth, which is the solar over the West Side Reservoir. Since we don't have anything installed yet, I can only show you this diagram. This is a regulating reservoir that we have solar panels that will float on the surface of the water, generating approximately 1 megawatt of power. All of this to say, the community has adopted a holistic approach to water management. The goal here ultimately is to restore the Curiacamo or the Gila River. By doing so, creating a diversity in hydro-based economies that supports all of the community's goal, restoring the aquifer so that we balance groundwater extraction, monetize the water so that we have flexibility should the community elect to sell some of that water, while at the same time reinvigorating and growing an agricultural economy that is culturally compatible and adaptable to the 21st century. And on that note, I will stop so that I don't take all of the time of the other presenters.
That was amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, hopefully, yeah, I'll keep us moving so we have time for questions. But yeah, amazing work. So, Jolene, if you're ready to share your PowerPoint now.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the TCR webinar series on the resilient infrastructure. My name is Jolene Auliye, and I'm one of the Assistant Tribal Climate Resilience Liaisons in the Alaska region, and I will be talking about Shaktoolik and our resilient infrastructure. So this is the unmet needs of environmentally threatened Alaska Native villages, and you could see some of uh, the range of the 144 environmentally threatened communities, and some of these are examples of some of the threats that are impacting, and you can see Shaktoolik is listed on the bottom. Um, and also just to give a quick introduction to this, we have the protect and place measures, the manage retreat, and the relocation. So right now, Shaktoolik is in the protect and place while we're trying to get our village relocated. And so again, I'm from Shaktoolik, and where will our future lead us? Just to give a overview of where I'm from, I'm on the eastern shore of the Norton Sound, which is right along the Bering Sea. This is our village. We have the Bering Sea on one side and the ocean or the river on the other. Just a quick biography. We are Inupiaq community, and we lived in this area as early as 1839. The village was originally located 6 miles up the Shaktoolik River and moved to the mouth of the river in 1933, which is our old site. And in 1967, Shaktoolik moved to its present site, which we are at today. And so this is just a map of where we are. Shaktoolik impacts. The everyday lives and traditions of people in the region are now being threatened by the impacts of environmental change. For example, higher average temperatures are associated with freeze up of sea and shore ice. The ice that does form is generally thinner than in decades past. During the fall storm waves, if ice is not in place, waves build up and cause significant damage to the shoreline. Over the years, with the sea ice declining, Shaktoolik has been vulnerable with each fall storm, and Shaktoolik was ranked #1 on the statewide threat assessment. Identification of threats from erosion, flooding, and thawing, and also permafrost in remote Alaska communities, and this was November 2019. Nice. So this is generally what happens if we do not have any shore ice. And that is right along the ocean side of our community. So each year we face fall storms and coastal erosion. Considerable coastline erosion occurred during the storms in 2003, 2004, and 2005. In September 2005, there was a flood that brought in piles of driftwood along the coastline. The airport had debris floating on top of the apron, threatening the use of the runway. In the 2013 storm, driftwood was piled along into the backyards of the homes on the ocean side, and leadership realized that with each storm, they were becoming more frequent and fiercer. So Shaktoolik decided to protect in place. Our community considered numerous near and long-term strategies to adapt to the climate change or the climate related threats, including eventual relocation of the village to higher ground. However, due to challenging logistics, high cost, and limited funding available for village relocations, Shaktoolik embraced a more immediate and costly solution, building a vegetated berm along the coast of the village to help keep the village safe. The community chose to protect in place. And so our leadership in 2014, the city of Shaktoolik received a grant from OAS to build what we call the berm in front of the village to help protect the community from fall storm waves. The following year, the city received funding from the Norton Sound Economic Development Corporation to repair and make the berm bigger. After realizing that this method worked, the native village of Shaktoolik IRA Council looked for funding to help keep the berm project going. In 2018, the tribe hired a community coordinator to help support ongoing efforts to protect our community. And so our community is proactive and began this on their own, the berm project. We have a tri-org, which consists of the executive directors from the city, the corporation, and the tribe, which are actively involved in this process. And this is our berm history. You can see the berm is along the ocean side of our village, which we're trying to protect our infrastructure. We have the water plant, the school, the electricity, and the fuel, the bulk fuel, all on the ocean side. So just to give a berm history, 2014 City of Shaktoolik received the OES grant. 2015, we received the NSEDC funds to repair the berm, making it bigger, because each year, with the fall storms that we were having, it was taking the toe of the berm. So we were having to repair it. In 2016, the tribe received Emergency Denali Commission funds to repair the berm. 2018 is when the tribe hired a coordinator for our berm project. 2019, the tribe received NIFWIF funds to repair and vegetate the berm. 2020 received HUD, ICDBG, and HUD IT funds to repair the berm in front of our village, and also the road that leads us to the foothills, which we call the first and second bend. And how the berm works. It protects our community from wave runup and debris during storm events. It was constructed from local driftwood and sand sourced from the mouth of our river for this project. And the Shaktoolik Native Corporation donated the sand gravel source as an in-kind donation. We used all local labor and equipment. The National Fish and Wildlife Grant provided funding to purchase 2 dump trucks, a water truck, and hired 12 to 15 locals to vegetate the berm using ryegrass that we got from the mouth of the river. And we also got an EPA Swiffer grant that purchased more equipment to maintain the berm. I'm sure it's happening. And so this is what happened during the Typhoon Merbok in September 2022. The disaster confirmed what many elders and engineers have said for years. The people of Shock Lake must relocate to higher ground and quickly. It was quoted by Stefan Lizak. So during the storm, we had the berm where you could see the driftwood, and it took only 2 to 4 hours for it to completely destroy the progress we had made. And conveniently, that year is when we had finished our project, and Merbach took it in just a few hours. And the photo, I'd like to give Gloria Andrew the photo credit for this. She takes amazing photos of before and after, and just some before and after photos in September 22, Typhoon Merbok hit our community. Within hours, the berm was completely destroyed, which caused coastal erosion and took 3 to 5 feet and created a wood drip pile along the old airport road. The road at First and Second Bend saw significant damage, and this reinforced the need to understand community migration. So you could see in September 15, our berm was completed, and you can see the ryegrass along the coast. And September 19, it was just completely covered in the wood that was brought in from the fall storm. And some of these are our infrastructure, like the school or electricity plant and the teacher housing. So you could see we saw significant damage after the Merbok storm. And all of the coastal erosion that happened immediately after, it took a lot of land from our old site, is what we call it. So it doesn't take much from the fall storms to erode our land. And so a lot of people were asking, is the berm working? Overall, the berm is protecting the community and the infrastructure from fall storm surges and waves. While it seems that millions of dollars are being wasted by maintaining the berm each year, it is not. By doing this measure, we are protecting our people and our homes. Without the berm, the piles of driftwood that come in with the fall waves would no doubt cause damage to the homes on the ocean side. We utilized our own resources as a community, came together, and began the proactive stages of protecting our community by building the gravel berm. And this is just some of the planning, the administrative work that was done prior. So protecting in place or construction, we had 2 rock trucks, a water truck, a service truck, a dozer, compactor, skid steer, and a motor grader, which was all purchased under the EPA Swiffer grant, which constructed our community berm, the First and Second Bend. And realizing that we didn't have a road out from our community, we had an escape routing lighting project, which we put lights going up our main river in case we needed to evacuate. And we also have a tower project by the tribe to document these changes that are happening. And again, since it's so cost effectively for us to build a berm, we're trying to look at different ways that we can construct our berm rather than using the sand and gravel. So we had Bristol Engineering come up with a few different ideas that we can do. And one of the projects was getting a rock quarry on tribal lands, potentially hiring the material source from our base of the hills, which is about 13 miles. So they're thinking to use the bigger rocks instead of the sand and gravel. And this is just some photos of our berm construction. In the left photo, you could see where we get our gravel source and the heavy equipment loading up the um the equipment and bringing them into town so that we can build the berm higher. So as I was talking, this is our escape routing lighting, or the escape route lighting project, which is consists of these towers here that are going up the main river in case we need to evacuate. And this is the tower project that we have for the berm monitoring. So we partnered with DGGS and they came and installed cameras. So protect and place versus manage retreat. The Golder report informed the need to plan for a retreat from the current location over the next several decades. Living along the coastline, we have no gravel roads to lead us into a safe place. All the higher ground is miles out of town at the foothills. Evacuation is not always feasible, though, due to storm timing and the lack of places to go. 13 miles south is the base of the foothills. This is where our leadership would like to build the safety access road. But with coastal erosion, the first and second bend is also susceptible to storm events and needs to be considered. Murbach threatened this area significantly. So this photo just shows all of the wood debris that happened during Murbach, and this is the road that leads us to higher ground. So we're proposing to have a safety access road built, and we just got the funding. The community was awarded with a HUD IT grant to help build the berm in front of the first and second bend. So this road would lead to a possible migration site. And just to give you an idea, this is our village, and the road, the beach road that goes all the way to the foothills is the nearest safety access point that we could get to. But due to the fall storms, it oh sorry, it Carter. So preparation for a managed retreat, Shaktoolik was awarded a 4 million BIA Tribal Resilience Grant to support this effort. We're advancing planning studies for the managed retreat, prioritizing the safety access road. Community involvement understanding is an important decision, and our community trier guides the process. The plan is in phases. The safety access road is phase 1. Some of the lessons learned was Mother Nature always wins. Such berm protects the main berm. Importance of being proactive as a community, using our own resources, labor and materials, purchasing equipment to support using our own resources, having a trier community working together, and the value in external partnerships like ANTC, Bristol, Quark, and others. And that is it.
Thank you, Jolene. I feel like that was a really good example of like kind of this nature-based solutions, and like you were saying, highlighting to use the community's own resources. To keep us moving, because I know we're kind of like running up on time, I'm gonna pass it over to Tsoniki for your presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tsoniki Crazy Bull. I am the Tribal Infrastructure Fund Capital Outlay Manager for the New Mexico Indian Affairs Department. I wanted to share a little bit about the Tribal Infrastructure Fund and Capital Outlay, which is run through or administered by our office. Currently, the Secretary of Indian Affairs is Josette Manette, and the New Mexico Indian Affairs Department serves the nations, pueblos, and tribes that are wholly or partially in the state of New Mexico. We have 19 pueblos We also have Fort Sill Apache Tribe, Jicarilla Apache Nation, Mescalero Apache Nation, Navajo Nation, and Ute Mountain Tribe. We have multiple areas of focus within New Mexico Indian Affairs, although we are a small department. And then I wanted to also share the map of the native land in New Mexico. Most or all of this information, excuse me, is available on the New Mexico Indian Affairs Department website. So the capital outlay, this is a unique situation for the state of New Mexico, I think for any state across the United States, because funding is awarded through the state legislators every year. The governor and then each of the Senate and the House have money that they fund infrastructure projects. So nations, pueblos, and tribes within New Mexico are able to apply for and receive funding for roads, schools, hospitals, water projects, wastewater projects, purchases, libraries. We have a huge list of these projects that we support for tribes across the state. The capital outlay process does start with a planning within the local nations, pueblos, and tribes. It's a pretty involved process. We have multiple state agencies that are involved outside of just working with the nations, pueblos, and tribes. Once the projects are awarded, the Indian Affairs Department manages, we administer the funding for those projects. We do not administer all the capital funding for projects that have been awarded, but we do administer most of it. So this starts with planning on the local level, goes through the representatives to the governor for signature, and so on until the project or until the capital award has been processed. We also have the Tribal Infrastructure Fund here in New Mexico. This was created in 2005. The Tribal Infrastructure Fund Act was created in 2005. This act recognizes that many of New Mexico's tribal communities lack basic infrastructure. This includes, and of course is not limited to, water and wastewater systems, roads, electrical power lines. The Act's purpose is to ensure adequate financial resources for infrastructure in these tribal communities. The goal and the purpose is to improve the quality of life and to additionally encourage economic development. The Tribal Infrastructure Fund Act created a Tribal Infrastructure Fund Board, and this is where the differences with capital outlay and the Tribal Infrastructure Fund come into play. Capital outlay is funded, or excuse me, awarded through the state during the legislative session. The Tribal Infrastructure Fund projects are competitive applications that are managed by the Tribal Infrastructure Fund Board. The Tribal Infrastructure Fund Board also creates a committee within itself that is the Tribal Infrastructure Fund Review Committee. There are a few rules that the nation, pueblo, or tribe must follow in order to apply for this funding. You have to list your project on the Infrastructure Capital Improvement Plan. This is part of the planning process that I mentioned. This is the same process with capital outlay. And then, of course, we also have the Public Finance Accountability Act that comes into play with the Tribal Infrastructure Fund. The Tribal Infrastructure Fund applications are currently being reviewed. As we speak, we are reviewing these projects. The portal closed mid-March. It always opens on the first Friday in February, which is American Indian Day here in New Mexico. And so we give the nations, pueblos, and tribes minimum of 30 days. It's often a little bit more because the application deadline will be extended for these applications to be submitted. We have multiple areas that the applications are read and scored on, including readiness and critical need for the specific project itself. The staff here at IAD reviews applications and supporting documents for eligibility, and then the applications themselves are reviewed and scored by the Tribal Infrastructure Fund Review Committee, making a recommendation to the board, and then the board will award the projects. The Tribal Infrastructure Fund Board is comprised of 14 members. This is all set up with the Tribal Infrastructure Fund Act back in 2005. So we're at 20 years of TIF. This is really exciting for us in the office once we started really compiling the data to see what is it that New Mexico and that the Indian Affairs Department has been able to support for nations, pueblos, and tribes over these years. The first Tribal Infrastructure Fund awarded $3 million. That went to 13 projects. And so that has grown now to this year in 2026. The NPTs in New Mexico have applied for 92,932,000. So as I mentioned, these applications are currently being reviewed by the committee, and they will be scored and then presented to the board for awarding. Over those 20 years, not including, of course, this current cycle of 92 million, 363 projects have been funded. And so that is just incredible for all of us here at the Indian Affairs Department. That is over $418 million that's gone into TIF. Again, as I mentioned, Tribal Infrastructure Fund is separate from capital outlay money. So just for TIF alone, $418 million. Last year, 28 projects were awarded for a total of $80,574,147. I wanted to highlight a few of our projects. And so we have multiple projects that we administer here, multiple projects that the nation's pueblos and tribes are awarded through both capital outlay and TIF. One of the main highlights currently is Mescalero Apache Tribe's Windy Point Housing. This has been a project that has multiple phases. They've been receiving both capital outlay and TIF money for this. Once the phase 3 is complete, they will have 128 homes, backup water sources, water storage tanks, and wells. They're improving the roads all around the housing community, improving the sewer lines, and much more for this particular project. Multiple nations, pueblos, and tribes throughout the state have road projects that the Indian Affairs Department administers. Most of the improvements are for safety features and improving the bridges, improving the drainage. Most of the road projects are actually funded through New Mexico DOT versus through the Indian Affairs Department. We also have purchases. So we've assisted or administered the funding for backup generators, for equipment, for communication devices, and for vehicles. And then I checked the numbers while I was prepping for this webinar that we right now have over 100 active water projects. And so that can range from stormwater control systems, upgraded wastewater treatment facilities, brand new wastewater treatment facilities, fixing drainage issues either on the pueblos or nations. We also administer funding to a few of the tribally controlled schools within the state. A few more projects that I wanted to make sure to mention is Picaris Pueblo has a solar farm, and they are currently working on an energy storage system for the solar. They are also, Santa Clara Pueblo is working on emergency radio communications, and IED assisted with that funding. Navajo Nation has multiple water line projects. One of the things that has happened is there may be federal funding that was available for a main water line, and then they apply for capital outlay or TIF funds to do the extensions to get it off of that main water line. Right now, the Indian Affairs Department is managing 625 active projects. That number is going to fluctuate a little bit as we reach the fiscal year. Some of the projects will expire. 93 projects were awarded during the most recent legislative session. As I mentioned, TIF is currently in review, and those projects will be awarded by the end of May. The projects within the state of New Mexico are funded for either 2, 3, or 4 years, depending on what they're doing. And so we are just really thrilled to be able to be a part of assisting the nation's pueblos and tribes with all of their infrastructure and economic development. And thank you very much.
Thank you. That was great. I see there are 10 minutes, and so I think we can stop the recording here and move into the Q&A portion. I want to thank everyone, especially our guest speakers, for contributing to this webinar today, and thank you for everyone who attended. And have a good day, everyone.
Thank you, Anissa, for the invite.
Thank you.